Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you a book review from the OG 62, and it's book number 6, Let's Get Invisible. I'm going to say this off the bat. I think this book is the most underrated book in all of Goosebumps. It's not a monster-driven story, but what it does and what it commentates on is something that Goosebumps very rarely can execute and execute well. This has one of the most satisfying builds and payoffs I think I've ever read in Goosebumps. And it's not the most riveting story by any means. It's all pretty much told in one location. But this story touches on topics like peer pressure and, there's even metaphors for drug use and addiction, and all of that plays into the story. And I can feel those hidden messages coming through the story, and for that, this is a very memorable book, I have to say. When I was a kid, I maybe read this once or twice. I always put it in the average category, but after revisiting it as an adult, I think this book deserves way more praise than it gets. And this is just one of the special books, I have to say. So let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So this story basically takes place all in one location, and that is the attic of this kid named Max's house. The story starts on Max's birthday. He's having a birthday party. It's raining outside. He's invited a few people that he knows, including his little brother named Lefty, who got his name. His name is actually Noah, but he got his name Lefty for being left-handed, and Max gave him the nickname, and I guess it just stuck. But since it's raining, not many people come to his birthday party. These two girls, Erin and April, come, and of course, Max's best friend Zach comes to his party as well. They all, do the typical birthday party stuff. He wants to watch a Terminator movie. There's a cool pop cultural reference talking about Terminator and playing a vintage game system. I don't know. It's kind of outdated for now. I don't know if the reprint changed the game system or anything, but the party pretty much goes by without a hitch. Zach manages to leave, but the two girls are waiting for their ride home. So Lefty and Max decide to go snooping around the house, and they notice the attic door, and they say, well, let's go up and check the attic. Max and Lefty have a dog named Whitey. They go up to the attic with the dog, and they're looking around the old dingy stuff in the attic, and Whitey keeps scratching at what appears to be this hidden door, and they open it up, and it opens it up to this pitch black room with seemingly nothing in it but this mirror. And this mirror has a weird light switch right in front of the mirror. So Max goes to flick the light switch on, and of course this light beams on, and Erin, April, and Lefty are astonished to see that Max basically has turned invisible. And Max doesn't believe him at first, but they're all their jaws basically dropped and hit the floor. They're like, this is something crazy out of a science fiction novel or something. This is amazing. This is something that's kind of weird, and maybe you should, turn the light switch back off to see what happens. Max, of course, turns the light switch off. He's panicking. He's trying to see if they're messing with him. And of course, he turns back visible after like 10 seconds or something. And he thinks that Lefty, Erin, and April are playing a prank on him, but after talking with them, he actually believes them. Of course, Erin and April go home, and Lefty is, perplexed, and he's like, I want to get invisible too, and Max is like, don't touch the mirror. Well, a few days go by, and after Max's birthday, he got distracted with school and whatnot, and he had the mirror on his mind during a restless night of sleep. Gonna go to sleep, so he decides to try to sneak up to the attic, and lo and behold, his brother Lefty had snuck up there with him. Max and Lefty decide to get invisible together, and they were invisible for about 10 minutes. But after being invisible for 10 minutes, they notice these side effects that start happening. And the best way to describe or parallel it to something is kind of like the effects of like drug usage. Like I said, it's kind of prevalent in the story. It's like when you use hard drugs, it takes a while to kick on. That's what it's metaphoring here. And when they start to feel weird, they pull the light switch, and they both turn back visible. And they can't believe how cool this is. They really want to show their friends again and have them come over, possibly to do a contest, which happens later on. But first, Max wants to show his friends. So Max, of course, invites Zach, Aaron, and April over. And Zach, for the first time, sees Max go invisible. Now, this makes Zach really jealous, and he really wants to go invisible. There's something that happens downstairs, and everybody goes down to check what's going on. While everybody's away, Zach makes himself invisible, and he's lasted about 10 minutes or so, something like that. And he feels like he set a record, and then that's when the whole competition thing started. Aaron and April go home again. They want to do the competition thing again. I think Max goes invisible as well another time, and the same effects happen. You kind of see the same thing happen with Zach. But then the next time they go invisible is when Zach, April, and Aaron come over again, and this time Aaron goes invisible first. And basically, in a nutshell, Aaron disappears, and they don't know what happened. And then when they flick the light switch off, she finally reappears. And this time something feels different and off about her. And before this situation happened, there was this whole situation with Lefty kind of by himself, where Max's and Lefty's grandparents came over to visit for dinner, and Lefty had turned himself invisible without Max knowing, and that kind of creeped him out, and Lefty said he didn't feel good and kind of disappeared for a while, and then it took him a while after the light switch turned off for him to come back. And he noticed that the same thing happened with Aaron, except with Aaron, she looks kind of different. But the competition was still going, so Zach turned himself invisible. This time they went outside and they messed with the neighbor for a little bit. And Zach was invisible for about 15 minutes. And they couldn't find Zach when they flipped off the light. And lo and behold, Zach reappears and he looks different and something's off. Now, there's this element in the story that's also touched here that Max is apparently hearing voices coming from this mirror, kind of drawing him to the mirror in a way. So Max is kind of spooked. He wants to call off the competition because he thinks that something could be messed up with the mirror, and it's making everybody that's turning invisible act weird and act funny. April was the only one, I believe, that never got invisible. But of course, there's this whole peer pressure scene where Aaron and Zach, after they've supposedly changed in a way, peer pressured Max to become invisible. And when Max becomes invisible this time, he waits around the mirror and he's just, trying to beat the time so he can immediately flick the switch and become visible again. And that was where the peer pressure element kicked in a whole lot there. But before he can flip off the light switch, there's a twist that happens in the story. Basically, Max gets sucked into the mirror. Now, this is where I'm going to kind of skim everything and not spoil it, because the ending is a really good payoff here. But there's a big revelation that Max learns within this mirror, that something is not right, and this mirror may or may not be creating mirror dimension versions of people. And this whole ordeal happens. Now, after the situation gets resolved, there's another twist, a big revelation at the end, when Max thinks that maybe everything's okay now. It seems like everybody's fine. And that's how the book ends. And it's one of the more memorable twists, I have to say, I've ever read. It really sticks with you, and it makes you think, so how do they go back and fix it now? But in a nutshell, that is Let's Get Invisible. Let's talk about the strengths I really liked about this book and actually really loved. Off the bat, Max and Lefty's relationship in this story is pretty home-hitting in a way. They start out kind of argumentative and they're at each other's throats. And as the story goes on, they tend to bond over this thing that's maybe or maybe not doing them more harm than good. And they find a connection in toxic things together, which may or may not be the ultimate downfall for Max and Lefty at the end of the day. And the mirror itself is just a big representation of what bad things can do when they're introduced into people's lives, like drugs, for example. The mirror is pretty much a big metaphor for that. And then, of course, Aaron and Zach being the two big ones here. And even Lefty at some point with Max is commentating on the peer pressure elements, which in this story is very impactful. And it serves as a good cautionary tale to learn from Max's story here. But with that being said, there are some slight negatives I have. And that is the controlled area the story has. Most Goosebumps books have big scope with like different changing, sceneries and all of that, but this entire story takes place basically in the attic of Max's and Lefty's house, which, I'm not the biggest fan of. I know one of the common criticisms of this book is that it's repetitive. I don't think that this book is repetitive because it adds more and more layers as the story goes along, but I definitely think the scenery is kind of stale, if that makes sense. I kind of wish there was more venturing outside, messing around with stuff, but as you read the book, I'm not going to spoil anything, there's a certain element to the mirror that I think is the reason why the story's so grounded with the attic. But other than that, that's one slight negative. And another one I have is the lack of explanation, especially when the grandparents come to visit. I don't think I mentioned this in the book overview or the book plot overview, but the grandparents used to own the house, and I had this sinking suspicion that the grandparents must have known about the mirror. I was hoping that there would be some slight origin to the mirror, maybe to offer where it came from. But at the end of the day, I don't think it really takes away anything from the story about knowing the mirror's origins, but I think it could have helped a lot, especially near the middle of the book, to kind of make it more interesting, because it was trying to build characterization throughout the whole thing and building, turmoil and situations more than it was scenery and atmosphere or explanation, which I kind of think that all those things combined are basically the book's only downfall, but it's not deal breaking, I would say. So when it comes to 0 to 5 stars for this book, I think this book is excellent, but I think it's on the lower end of excellent. So from a 0 to 5 stars, I think I'm going to give it a solid 4.5 out of 5. I think this book gets an A. I really think, especially the older readers out there, maybe you haven't read Goosebumps in years, maybe if you're in your 20s, and you want a book to come back and revisit that has more substance than just monsters and, scary, innocent R.L. Stine fun, this one might do it for you. I think this one is a great example for, maybe 10 to 11-year-olds to delve into because of its, undertones in the story. I kind of would recommend this for 8 or 9-year-olds. I think it'll be more impactful than a 6 or 7-year-old. I don't think 6 or 7-year-olds would enjoy this book as much as maybe like a preteen would. But I think adults who have gone through life and through teenagehood and all of that will definitely relate to this book in some way. So yeah, that's basically what I thought of Let's Get Invisible. Let me know in the comment section, did you love or did you hate this book? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.